What is going on, guys? It's Bucky and welcome to your 59th C++ tutorial. And in this tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to use function templates, but instead of just a single parameter like last time, we're going to be using a multiple parameter. So let me go ahead and explain to you guys what the heck I'm talking about first. You know, in the last tutorial, I taught you guys how to build basically a generic function to add like two integers together or to add two doubles together. Well, in this tutorial, we're going to be able to work with two different data types. For example, we're going to be able to take an integer and a double and add those together. Or maybe, a long and an integer and add those together. So they don't have to be the same data type. All the parameters we pass in, we can work with two different types of data in the same function. So we're going to need to set this up a little bit different than we have before. So let's go ahead and first get two different types of data to work with. So let's go ahead and make an integer variable x and set this equal to 89 or any integer you want. And go ahead and make another, double variable. It really doesn't matter the data type as long as they're different. So pass it in a double y and set this equal to, some 56.78 or something like that. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be building a function to compare these two numbers and just return whatever number is smaller. So in this case it would return 56.78. So let's go ahead and pass in those two numbers, x and y, and hopefully if we build our function correctly it'll print out the smaller number right on the screen. So let's go ahead and set up this function template right now. So like before, whenever we're building a function template, we always need the keyword template, but we need to spell it correctly. Template, just like that. And now, unlike before where we just had one generic class and we named it Bucky or something, we're going to be working with more than one generic class. So make sure you name your classes something that you can work with later on. I like to just name mine first and second. And by the way, I might as well mention this to you guys. You guys are going to see this a lot, like capital T and capital U. It's like kind of a programming standard to use one capital letter whenever you're making a template class, but I really don't like doing that. I like, something a little more descriptive like first and class second. If you're in like a programming class or you're watching this because you forgot how to do this for your job or something, you typically want to use one capital letter, but whenever I'm programming, you're just going to have to deal with it. So now that we have a template, this line is pretty much saying this. We're going to be working with two data types, but we don't know what those data types are yet, so we're going to be giving them generic names. So first and second. So whenever we're building our function, you first write the return type, which is first. And now our function name was smaller, and it took two parameters. One number, and we'll call this one A, and another number, and we'll call this one B. And all our function itself does is hello. And all our function does is it takes two numbers and returns whatever one's smaller. And we can do that by writing one nifty line of code. If A is less than B, then return A. If not, return B. So it's going to be saying, alright, is A less than B? If it is, return A. If it's not, return B. So it's basically going to return to you the smaller number. So now, let's go ahead and now that our function is working properly, let's go ahead and test this and make sure it works. As you can see, we compared 89 and 56.78, and it turned that double 56.78 into an integer. And you're saying, alright, we just compared two numbers, so shouldn't it be giving us just 56.78? Why did it chop off the 78? That's because of this. Whenever we built our function template, it pretty much saw what type of data we were passing in. So we're saying, alright, we want to get the smaller of two numbers. We want to first pass you in an integer, 89, and then a double, 56.78. So I said, alright, make first, in anywhere you see first, change it to an integer. So it said, alright, I'm going to change this to int, this to double, and I'm going to return an int because that was the first thing we passed in. So since this return type was the first type of data we passed in, it converted this double to an integer, because remember, anytime you saw first, it converted it to an int. We could have changed this around. We could have, pass this one in first, so it was y, x, and whenever we did that, we would get 56.78. In that way, we could have it more precise because in this case scenario, the first thing we passed in is a double, and the second number we passed in was an int. So whenever it's looking at your template, wherever it sees first, it's going to replace it with double, and that includes the return type right here in the first parameter, and the second parameter would of course be an integer. So it would take a double and an integer, and since it returned a double, that's why we got back the double. So basically what I'm saying is this: whenever we're working with two different types of data, you need more than one generic classes, or pretty much placeholders. Basically a generic, or excuse me, basically a generic class is just a variable for the type of data instead of the value itself. Does that make sense to you guys? So instead of having a variable for this, you have a variable for this. Simple enough. And these variables can only be types of data like int, double, long, yada yada yada. So basically, people usually build these templates to work with. You usually don't see more than 3 or 4. It's usually 1 or 2. But yeah, that's basically how it works. Anytime you want to build a function template that takes more than one type of data, you need to separate them into more than one generic classes. And then you can use those generic classes just like you would any other type of data. So hopefully you guys understand what that means. Again, if this is just too confusing and you don't want to keep track, you can go ahead and build a lot of overloaded functions and it's going to work, just fine. But if you want to use this, it's going to save you a little bit of coding, and it's a little more confusing to look at, but once you got it down, it makes your life a whole lot easier. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions, just ask me on my forum, and I'll try to answer them for you guys. Sometimes I'm busy, but I can usually answer them for you guys. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.